Okay, so I know it's been quite a while since I last made a video, and I did say that I would update frequently, and that's just not what's happened. I feel kind of guilty about it. I'm sorry I haven't been able to be the resource that I hoped I would be, but it just hasn't been possible for me. I've not been in particularly a good place. I don't know if anyone noticed, but I did make all my posts and videos private that were to do with surgery for a while. I have now made them public again, but for a while I just wasn't able to look at them or think about anything. I'm not saying that I'm not happy, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have done it again, I just wasn't in the frame of mind where I felt like I wanted to talk about it. I've kind of reminded myself why I had surgery, which was for me, not for anyone else, and that I did it so that I could live a life where I wasn't dysphoric and in pain from binding, and I can just put a shirt on and go out and not have to worry about things and not have to keep a mental tally of how long I've been binding, so I know how much more I can bind before I start getting in pain. So I don't have to turn down doing things so I can have a break from binding. Just so my life wasn't ruled by binding and dysphoria and all the rest of it. Reminding myself that that's why I did it, and that's why I needed it, and not so I could do some strange, bizarre research on the whole thing so I can share it with other people, has really helped me be less kind of ashamed and embarrassed about how I'm healing or not healing. I think that part of the problem was that I had peri, and because there's so few results out there, I felt quite pressured into being amazing at recording everything for other people, so that they had the resources to make a good informed decision for themselves. And hopefully I can go back and fill in the gaps. I don't have as many pictures as I'd like for the first few weeks of healing, but yeah, they are very different for everyone, which I've discovered now. Really, it's the long-term thing you need to be looking at when you're looking at surgery anyway. So I'm now 4 weeks post-surgery. As I said, I had the peri-areolar technique with Andrew Yelland in Brighton. One side of my chest I am so pleased with, I'm really happy about. The other side is the one which is causing me the grief, and I don't think that any of this is anyone's fault in particular. I'm not going to try and put the blame on anyone, because that's not going to help me, it's not going to help anyone. It is what it is, and I still don't know how it's going to turn out. You know, I could sit and torture myself and think, well, if I'd done that, if I'd done this, if he'd done that, if he'd done this, and think of all the what ifs. But I will never know how it could have turned out, even if I had done all those things, and everything I've done I thought was the right thing to do at the time. And yeah, I'm just not going to sit and torture myself and try and put the blame on anyone, because it's not going to make me feel any better, and it's not going to change anything. Yeah, I would still do it again. You know, I'd still go and do it if the same thing happened on, you know, both sides. So to give a quick explanation of why I disappeared and what happened. About 3 days after my post-op, I was starting to get quite worried about the smell coming from this side, which is actually my better side. Because I had the micropore tape around my nipples, I couldn't really see much, apart from it was a bit gooey, and the smell wasn't really bad, but it smelled like a dog's foot, if you ever sniffed a dog's paw. And just because it had that smell, and because it was a Friday, and I knew I'd struggled to get to see anyone over the weekend, I was just concerned that if it was an infection, then it would get worse. So I emailed Yelland. I couldn't actually face calling, which probably would have been the best thing to do. And then I called my GP. They couldn't fit me in there, they couldn't fit me in somewhere else, so they sent me to an urgent care place up at the hospital. And I went up there and kind of explained what was going on. And she had a look at it. She decided to take the micropore off because it was a Friday. He said take them off at the weekend. It didn't seem really like it was going to make any difference at that point. And she cleaned it up. She said it didn't look infected. She couldn't smell anything. When she took the tape off, it was very obvious that my skin hadn't healed to the nipple as perhaps it should have done. Maybe I moved too much, maybe the staples came out too early. It does me no good to try and think about why it happened. So it was basically a gap, maybe about this big, on this side particularly, where the skin just hadn't met up with the nipple, and there was a raw patch, and yeah, it was pretty grim. She cleaned them up and then she dressed them, because she didn't think it was a good idea to have raw flesh exposed, and said leave it on for a few days. I was feeling okay about it. It was annoying, I knew it would scar more, but I wasn't feeling too bad about it. I was just feeling a bit bemused by the fact that she didn't really know what was going on. Like, she could obviously look after a wound, but she was looking at me and trying to work out how I'd had this procedure done when there was no big scars. What I think really messed with my head was the fact that I then got a bus back. I got the taxi there, didn't really want to pay another £7, so I got a bus back. I thought it'd be alright. I got the buses in Brighton. I'd never got a bus here before, and I got on the bus alright. I had a vague idea of where I needed to get off. I didn't actually know where the bus stop was, and some got there and someone else rang the bell, so I thought, the stop must be here. I jumped up, went to get off, but the bus pulled away before I could get through a crowd of people that was standing at the front. I couldn't reach the bell because there were all these people around me, and I feel like an idiot for not saying anything, but I was just a bit intimidated by all these college students who were kind of staring at me thinking, what the fuck, why have you just joined us here? I ended up hanging from one of those straps on the ceiling by this arm. This was the side that had separated more. I ended up, a mile past the stop where I was going to get off. I just felt really, really bad because I've been pulling at this while hanging off this, going round roundabouts and corners and everything, trying to stay upright. Obviously I'd have hurt myself more if I hadn't been holding on, because I'd have fell over. I just felt like I had ruined everything. Made worse by the fact I had these dressings on and I couldn't see what I'd done. I felt a lot worse than I had done in a long time after that. I think the next couple of days just crying. After the few days when I took the dressings off as advised, it was just not looking pretty. I was advised to redress it, but in the sort of hour that I sat around basically crying that morning, I could see that it was starting to dry up and kind of heal a bit more than it was with the dressing on. So I didn't put the dressing on, and spent the whole day like letting it get to the air. So I didn't have a shirt on, I just had a dressing gown open over it, basically just trying not to burst into tears or be sick or anything. I just felt really, really bad. I was supposed to have a friend coming over to keep me company, and I kind of made some excuses. I just couldn't face explaining what happened or seeing her. I think that's the day that I deleted everything, or made everything private. Since then, it's been getting better, and it is now starting to heal, and bits of scabby graft stuff is now coming off. I did eventually get a response from Yelland the Monday after. I haven't contacted them since, because I know that all they're going to say is to keep it clean, and do what I'm doing. There's nothing they could do either way, which is why I didn't contact them, and I did feel that I'd let him down. It's probably a really daft thing to feel. I just felt like he would be disappointed with me, and because I was feeling quite ashamed and embarrassed about my chest at that time, I just couldn't face sort of anyone else being disappointed in me. And I'm not saying that if your chest doesn't go perfect you should be ashamed and embarrassed. I'm kind of embarrassed by feeling those feelings, but that was how I felt. I just didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to look at it. I felt like a failure. I felt like I'd failed myself and Yelland and the trans community, because I wanted to be someone who was sharing their experiences in a way that it helps them, and I felt like I wasn't doing that because I couldn't face it. Even if I did do it, I wouldn't be a good representation. But things have picked up from then. I'm feeling alright about it. It's not as perfect as it could have been. It's not as perfect as some other people's, but I always knew that it might not be perfect, and reminding myself that I've achieved my aim of being able to have a chest that I don't have to think about, aside from getting it to heal, is great. You know, I have achieved what I went to do. Yeah, so I guess I'll show you my chest now. Okay, so this is my chest. This is the side that I am really happy about. If I could get a mirror and like mirror myself like this, you know, I would be really happy with everything. There's basically no swelling, which is really lucky because I haven't been doing as I've told and been wearing the binder, sort of gradually weaning myself off it. I really didn't wear it at all for kind of weeks 2 and 3 because of this nipple. I just felt it was better for it to get the air to it rather than put a binder on. And I've only worn it, you know, a couple of hours on a couple of days since then. It just, there's so little swelling, it doesn't really make much difference. I really should wear it more. Yeah, my priority was getting the nipple to heal, not the swelling. Like, that could be resolved a lot quicker. So yeah, this is my left side. It's not perfect, there's a bit of scarring here and a tiny bit at the top, which is why it's looking a bit sort of oblong and odd shaped. Hopefully that scarring will go down in time. It's basically all healed without any scabs. But there's a little scab here, which is where there was a stitch that was poking out that was stopping it from healing. So yeah, that's this side. It's this side which is kind of causing me the worry. Again, there's like a tiny bit of swelling here, and it's only the sides really that hurt. Like when I touch them, they're just tender. This side is stretched a bit more, and I think that this is a nipple graft that hasn't taken rather than a scab. Hopefully it heals and looks reasonably nipple-ish, but I'm not as bothered by it as I thought I would be if something like that was to happen, because I've got one nipple that looks really good. One nipple that looks alright and one that doesn't, to me, seems a lot easier to cope with than the other way around, and easier to explain and all the rest of it. The placement I don't think is too bad. It's quite hard to tell because I can't tell where my pec line is, possibly a little bit low, but that was always going to be a risk, and I think it looks fairly normal. You can tell a bit easier when you can see all of me, but I don't think it looks really that bad at all, sort of in terms of how high or low it is. Yeah, as you can see, there's not really much swelling at all, and it all looks a bit natural. There's like a little dent here, and there seems to be more tissue left here than there is here, but I'm not sure whether that is actual tissue or whether it's just how my body is. I'm not really bothered by it. So despite sort of all the drama that's going on about this side, I'm feeling a lot more positive about things, and I'm very glad that I did it. And to be honest, if my chest was to stay exactly how it is now, the scabby, grafty thing and all, I would still feel a lot happier about life. So yeah, I think it's like a success, and things are only going to get better from here. I feel a bit silly for just cutting myself off, basically, when I was not feeling particularly good about it. But I don't want to apologise for doing that, because it was what I needed to do at the time, and I needed to look after myself mentally as well as physically.